has been cordoned off 100%. So quite sad, you will say, because from that end, people will not be able to move. So the policemen have been able to move at this particular time, and you can see the youths are coming. I'm just looking to make sure that no one is throwing the stones. But I know also when the policemen seem to go on that end, and then this youth again becomes rowdy, anything at any particular time might be able to happen. We're talking about stones, and yes, we are seeing some of these youths throwing the stones. And you know, anytime that the policemen retreat, then it means the youth now do advance, and you can be able to see they are advancing. Then the police will retreat a little bit, and then again they will charge, and in that now you will be able to see all that kind of an affair of tear gas and every other single kind of drama that comes with this kind. So the strategy of the police advancing, anytime from now, if you see a tear gas, someone is throwing a stone. I've been able actually to move my colleague here. We're trying as much as possible to be safe as we are telling you what is happening on this end. So the policemen have retreated. You've been able to see that. So when they retreat, and Jesse, earlier you had asked you had asked, yes, in black and white, after retreating, the tear gas, and it becomes again running battles. A young man there almost injured, I think, but he's dancing to the tune that he was singing earlier on. So this is what is happening here. Again now, after retreating, the police again, and we will be able to follow them in close proximity just to show you what exactly is happening. Again, it becomes a seesaw affair, one which we don't have a winner, because it will be retreat, surrender, again retreat, surrender for both sides. You had earlier asked about means of transport. I know at this particular time, a number of times we always have vehicles that go towards a thicker road. So you can see we don't have a single means of transport here at this particular time. And the young man here actually, he's saying alikuwa nangoja gari. We can't ascertain if that is the truth. But after the retreat of the policemen, they have been able to get one, maybe, of the protesters, and then they start that song again. So maybe we can just let you see the live pictures of what is happening here at this particular time. But Jesse, you will agree that this will not end any minute now or any time soon, because the kind of the seesaw affair that has been here has been the part of the day, and we're trying as much as possible. I can also be able to look on the other side. That is just outside Odeon, because we had another group of policemen who I think they've been able to throw some tear gas canisters on that side, just again to make that group of the protesters again retreat maybe, and then they will regroup and they will be able to do it again. So it's not business as usual, Jesse, and also Seto, but we're trying as much as possible just to see how well the things here are transpiring. But the question then, I had asked earlier, till what time will they do it? They do not seem to tire, because when you think about the age of the most of the individuals who are part of the demos that are happening here today, then it's a tender age, and they have the energy. Do they have a plan, really? I wouldn't say they have one, because it's going back, coming again, going back, coming again. But something that we must not.
And the pictures on your screens are coming to you live from Ngara and the Central Business District here in Nairobi, where, as you can see, police have sealed off major roads in the city and those leading to State House, with sections of military spotted in Nairobi. And this is a day after President William Ruto made a dramatic U-turn and withdrew contentious tax hikes following anti-finance bill protests. We are bringing you pictures live from parts of the country where there's heavy police deployment as protesters are held at bay following anti-finance bill protests that have been happening since Tuesday this week. And even as we bring you those pictures, we are expecting the High Court to deliver.
Tear gas has been lobbed, a couple of youth making their way from that particular area, even as some cars,
a ruling on whether it will issue,
are trying to make their way into the CBD. So not much of activity, even though there is activity, especially in terms of heavy security presence in the capital, Nairobi. And it seems they've earmarked each and every entrance, because this is the side towards Pangani, towards Uhuru Highway. We definitely saw military personnel making their rounds, and inside the CBD we've seen heavy deployment of police officers, especially within the evening of Tuesday. We definitely saw some businesses affected, looted, their goods were stolen, and it was definitely a cause of concern, bearing in mind President William Ruto had given the assurance that security is of utmost priority. So it seems heavy security presence still within the CBD. Earlier on, we put Moses Wahisi to task to explain what exactly is happening in terms of transport, because some of this youth might not be protesting. At the end of the day, some went to work, to their businesses, and at the close of business, they might be looking for ways to go home. We've just seen a bus right there, even as we've shifted focus to Kakamega County right now, where there seems to be a crowd gathered outside the Kakamega County funeral parlor. Remember, this is coming to you live right here on KTN News. So do stay with us as we continue highlighting what exactly is playing out in various parts of the country in regard to the anti-finance bill protests. Remember, today, pockets of chasing battles between the police and the protesters. Not much to talk about, even as we noted in Migori County, 4 gunshot wounds. There are actually 4 people who are surviving gunshot wounds and are getting medical attention at Migori County Hospital, including 2 police officers. But this is Kakamega County, and they seem to be holding a vigil, black candles, perhaps in support of the lives that were lost during the protest on Tuesday. There you have it, actually blue candles right there. And these are commonly associated to vigils, where some of these protesters are just remembering those who might have lost their lives. Remember, according to various rights organizations, the tally of the dead is up to 23. But remember, just yesterday, President William Ruto gave the figure at 6 fatalities so far. And this is despite human rights activists claiming that up to 23 Kenyans had died during the protest. In terms of compensation, the president said a mechanism will be put in place to ensure that the families will be taken care of in one way or the other, not necessarily saying that verbatim, but hinting towards a mechanism being put in place. But that's the vigil happening in Kakamega. No running battles, just perhaps remembering what played out in the course of Tuesday, leading to a couple of lives being lost. Aseta, you know what they say, one life is too many.
One life is way too many. The president gave his number, the human rights, the civil society bodies gave their number. We just wait to see what next with regards to police excesses as well, because it has been largely claimed that police used excessive force while dealing with the demonstrators. And on the other side, well, one would also argue, but what do you expect to do when you attack the police? So it is a question of we wait to see how that goes, because even the Constitution itself talks of a peaceful protest and unarmed. So that on your right, that is the right side of your screen, that is Kakamega funeral parlor, as those there seem to be standing or waiting for someone who is in there. We wait to see as we get development from that area. But on the left of your screen, that is Nairobi CBD, as police continue to do rounds, making sure that they maintain security. We've seen police officers not taking chances, making sure that they actually kind of frisk everybody that is passing near them, especially those with backpacks, seeing what is in there, and people just allowed to go after that. And we've also seen a situation where there's this young gentleman who was walking close to the police. Police called him, they went, and they're like, "Niko sawa, I'm just on my way." And yeah, you would go. We would not have witnessed these back on Tuesday when the demonstrators were in the CBD. And as you can see, the water cannons still continue to be in the CBD, police vehicles together with the anti-riot police officers. But of importance is the fact that there is the cat and mouse game that is happening in the CBD. The young, the protesters pretty much, who charge against the police, the tear gas is thrown, then they retreat and all that. It's a ping-pong game, a cat and mouse game that we wait to see how these will go. But remember, the police have continued to maintain that they will not allow any form of protesting to happen, not only in Nairobi, but across the country. We've seen in Eldoret, it is a different form of protesting. We have protesters in Uasin Gishu County, even holding a vigil at the county headquarters in Uasin Gishu County, as they say they would not let the protest to take place in that town. Remember that Uasin Gishu County is the stronghold, if you may, for the president. But for the past protests, we've seen that that county has actually witnessed numbers of individuals, protesters, who came out to go against the finance bill. And we've also seen the destruction that followed on Tuesday when that bill sailed through in the National Assembly. Earlier today, I had a conversation with Bishop Kosgei, nominated senator, who gave his views on what actually happened. The young people who escorted him and even sent him with a message to the president with regard to the finance bill 2024, which, as we stand today, the president has rejected that bill. He has not appended his signature and actually referred it back to the National Assembly. The National Assembly, which as we speak is on recess, we wait to see when the National Assembly Speaker, Moses Wetangula, will be calling for a special sitting so that they discuss the way forward with regard to that bill. But even as we have the discussion, as we continue to bring you this live coverage of the situation in Nairobi and across the country, the next question is what next? How then do we move forward? And it is only hoped that after all that has happened, that the Gen Zs, the youth, every Kenyan pretty much will then come forward and give their views to the budget making process so that what it is they want will be included in that budget, because Kenyans have spoken. The president has conceded and he has withdrawn he says he's withdrawn that bill and referred it back to the National Assembly. But also important is the fact that the president said that he would do everything to ensure that the property of Kenyans, public property, is actually safeguarded. Hence the reason why today, through that gazette notice by the cabinet secretary, the military has been deployed. Earlier we spoke, we were actually being that is needed with regard to security of the public, and that is exactly why today they have been deployed. But remember that we also expect that ruling by the court on whether the military will be going back to the barracks or they will continue being on the streets to assist with maintaining security. And that ruling is by High Court Judge Lawrence Mugambi. It was expected to be here by 3 p.m. As we speak, right now it's around 3:35, and we expect to see whether KDF will retreat back to the barracks or not. And AG Defense Ministry opposed the case filed by the LSK, who continue to maintain that there is no emergency in the country that warrants the deployment of security officers. And also just news that we are getting is the anti-government protest. 2 police officers have been injured. 4 people have sustained gunshot wounds in Migori and are receiving treatment at the county referral hospital, as we continue to bring you the latest on what is happening across the country. Our reporters are stationed across across the country. And those are live images coming to you live from Kakamega County. It is a group of protesters who have been marching on the streets, airing their views, demanding about the finance bill pretty much and what it is they want. But Jesse, of notice now is the fact that the finance bill, the protests against the finance bill have been clear-cut on what they want to achieve. Seems like today nobody's really sure on why people are demonstrating today.
Well, the Gen Z have to be very careful not to get their message convoluted in one way or the other, because just the same way on Tuesday, where we saw, yes, protesters, Gen Z, millennials, you name it, engage in peaceful protests, we saw criminal elements infiltrate the protesters. So shifting focus in terms of the messaging of this protest, we don't want any quote-unquote criminal elements to infiltrate and change the agenda. They were quite categorical in terms of shutting down the Finance Bill 2024. There's some concessions that have been made in that particular route by the president, sending that bill back to Parliament so that those clauses can be combed through. And remember, away from that, they were quite adamant about the fight against graft in the country. And I can remember some of these Gen Z protesters echoing what we've seen on social media, some leaders flaunting cash in various harambes across the country. And the quick question would be, is that taxpayers' money? Who knows? But it definitely doesn't send a clear, good message to the citizenry back at home in terms of who are drowning in terms paying taxes. Remember, just yesterday, President William Ruto said out of every 10 shillings, 6 goes towards paying our debts. So out of the 4 shillings that remains in terms of development and recurrent expenditure and whatnot, Kenyans seem to be adamant in terms of not seeing any wastage in terms of the taxpayers' money. Equally, they highlighted matters to do with government spending and wastage. And remember, some of the concessions given by President William Ruto yesterday touched on budget cuts, not just within the executive, within the presidency, but also within other state departments as well, including cuts to something that was quite controversial and irked many, the confidential expenditure. That's one thing that will be looked upon. Equally, matters to do with hospitality, which many Kenyans were questioning if we are truly if they truly found a dilapidated economy, you know, quote unquote, then they shouldn't be flaunting. And if I can quote the deputy president, msitapikie wananchi, you know. So it definitely is opening up a conversation for the country. And remember, earlier on Aseto, we were questioning how exactly will the president in a fortnight or so be able to have this conversation with members of the Gen Z generation, you know. Seems to be leaderless, tribeless, and whatnot. So it's definitely interesting in terms of what exactly will happen next, even as we continue monitoring the state of developments happening in Kakamega, right, Aseto?
Yeah, and even as we continue with that now, there's the issue of spending and wastage that is here. We know just the other day, Kenyans had a lot of questions with regard to that trip that the president made to the United States, and that has been the question that Kenyans are asking, because even the Gen Zs themselves are asking these difficult questions, and we wait to see how the president will equally put his house in order moving forward, because as we have that discussion today, we have the confidential budget. We equally, Kenyans are asking, why are we having budgets to the office of the spouses of the president and the deputy president, prime cabinet secretary, yet we did not vote for them? Why do we have all these offices? Therefore, even when the president is talking about austerity measures, we need to start seeing that from the head trickling down. Equally, how the members of parliament have been addressing these Gen Zs and Kenyans in particular with a lot of arrogance, as the Gen Zs are saying. Therefore, moving forward, clearly the political class need to learn that there is a way of talking to your people, because what they are enjoying is delegated responsibility, because the power belongs to the people. But now, let us just go to Kakamega and listen in to what is happening there.
House, Nairobi, yesterday, where he said he had listened to the views of Kenyans. The president pointed out
in 14 days hiyo bili itakuwa imepita. Na ubunge wameenda wanataka 18 days. Resign to resign ama hajataki tena bili resign. Anaitwa kwani atakile kama mataifa yenyewe. Tupiga madanganya mbona mabule tumekule. Anakuja kutuambia hivyo anakuja Wakenya wamechoka na ile Kenya na nini? Umechoka na Ruto aende. Wote ametashia aende Dubai. Amechoka kama wanachoka.
Smile kwa picha na kidogo. Nikupige picha. Mbona unapiga picha sana?
This is live.
Yes, nichukue nione.
Hii ni TV ya live.
Yes, tumekuja kuona mwili moja.
Basi ikianza live sasa nitakwambia. Kwaji ati every minute ati live.
Sasa leo nikubali kuongea utaki.
Bado niko na hasira.
All right, that's the latest in terms of what we're witnessing in various parts of the country. We've just informed you about the developments playing out in Kakamega, right outside that mortuary in the town, even as some seem to be holding a vigil right there. Pockets of running battles between the police and protesters, which isn't in terms of so huge in terms of the numbers, but we'll definitely keep you updated in terms of any developments playing out, so do keep it KTN News. Well, the English team exits the studio. We leave it to the very able Kiswahili team, so do keep it here for more updates on the latest developments touching on the
where it went and it was read clause by clause.
My name is Jesse
Every
Rogers.
clause was read and the MPs either voted yes or no to the clause, and there were no amendments. Therefore, all clauses were voted and they passed. After that reading, the next point of call where we were now on Tuesday is that the bill and therefore pass it with those recommendations. They can do partially. They can say, these recommendations, they are good, but not all of them. We are going to pick recommendations A, B, C, and then the rest we are not. So we also, that is the second option. The third option, they can entirely decide a few of them or all of them, they are supposed to do voting. And that vote
gives you long-lasting protection
so that those recommendations can actually say through and be part of the bill. They have to be voted by at least 2/3 of the members.
Okay.
And therefore that's a big, a tall order. But in this particular circumstance, nothing like this has ever happened. The president in his memorandum last evening said, and he proposed the withdrawal of a bill. First, that the president cannot withdraw a bill because it's unheard of, it is nowhere in law.
Okay.
But he also said that in consultation and in agreement with the members of parliament behind him when he was making the speech, so those members of parliament are the one that can go back into parliament, and the only thing that they can do, because the president said that he has listened to Kenyans and Kenyans don't want the bill entirely. That's what he said.
Yes.
Entirely. Therefore, what entirely means is that every clause of that bill will be deleted. And therefore, the mover of the bill, that is the majority leader, Kimani Ichung'wah, has two options. He can either request and send a request to the Speaker of the National Assembly requesting to withdraw the bill entirely. Or he can propose amendments in terms of deletion, and therefore the process will now go back to second reading, where the National Assembly and all the members will be read the amendments. And when the amendments are read, the amendments will be very funny, Lillian, because it will be saying that the mover or it is proposed to be deleted this clause.
So this is a lot of technical jargon for Kenyans. The back and forth, the mover of the bill, it should, requesting for the bill to be withdrawn entirely, back and forth, back and forth. But essentially what is happening is the scenes that we're seeing on our screens continue.
Yes, they are not going anywhere.
They're not going anywhere. There is no end in sight. So, to simplify this entire process, is there an end in sight?
There is an end in sight, but we cannot see it because the Speaker of the National Assembly has not called his troops. And what maybe the president would have gone further to say yesterday, he ought to have gone further and said, I am also requesting, because he cannot direct the Speaker because the Speaker is independent and leads an independent arm of government. I am requesting the Speaker, who is the leader of the National Assembly, to recall his troops, to recall the members of the National Assembly from recess and consider my recommendations in this memoranda. And therefore, the Speaker, considering the scenario that we are seeing and how the state has been put, because people are not working, it is actually not a good state to be in as a country. Therefore, the Speaker ought to have taken this seriously and called his members today. There is nothing difficult in that. In any case, yesterday morning they did convene immediately and executed the approval of the defense forces. So this is as serious as that. The circumstances are bad and they actually require for that sitting to be done immediately.
But you say the Speaker of the National Assembly has not recalled his troops, and it would have been wise for the president to actually call upon him to do the same. We have a 14-day timeline that we're looking at. Essentially, if they're not recalled, then the 14 days elapse, and then what?
And then, but what the law actually says in good interpretation is that if the president does not assent and does also not equally send recommendations. So if he doesn't do any of those and sleeps on his rights and his duty, within 14 days, that bill will become law. But as at now, we have actually stopped that process. The 14 days cannot begin to count. The reason, he has sent a memoranda. So he has activated his second obligation and duty. Now, all eyes and concentration is now in Parliament, because if the National Assembly is not reconvened and called from recess, they did say that they are coming back from recess on 23rd of July. And therefore, we cannot afford as a country to stay without an appropriations bill, because the finance bill, we have no problem. We will continue with the Finance Act of 2023. There's really no lacuna, but the appropriations bill has to be enacted, it has to be passed, and it has to be made law. Therefore, the Speaker of the National Assembly, the Honorable Etangula, he ought to take this matter with the seriousness and urgency that it deserves, because he's actually, according to me, putting the president in bad light, because they are taken to take orders from the president. And we would all have thought or assumed that immediately the president did that, the National Assembly being largely Kenya Kwanza, led by the president, they would move on and reconvene. They make sure what the president has actually said happens on the ground, and they also make sure that the government that they are in and in which they form part of the majority does not fail.
Now, talking about the finance bill and its pros and cons, its importance, there are people who feel very strongly about it. In fact, as you can see on our screens, the voice of the nation and the heartbeat of the nation is totally pained towards, some of the clauses here. And the president, in his televised address yesterday, said that withdrawing the bill would mean a significant hole in funding for development programs to help farmers and school teachers, among others. We're already a cash-strapped government was basically the mood of what he was saying. And therefore, even as he rolled back on some tax measures previously, we also know that the Treasury has warned of a gaping budget shortfall. So going back and starting this process all over again, will that really have met to the needs of the people, seeing that the government has continuously told us that we are a cash-strapped nation, that we have massive debt, the country has incurred massive debt, and therefore, even as the protests continue because of some of the extremities in this finance bill, the issue that the president keeps going back to is that we are, in fact, quote unquote, a broke nation.
I don't think so, Lillian, because every year in, year out, we normally have a finance bill that we normally discuss, and there is normally a budget that is read, so that in that budget, we enumerate all our needs as a country, and we also enumerate how much they will cost us. Then we move to the appropriations bill. We appropriate what each of those heads will be given, or the amount of money that will be set aside for all those votes. And then we have the finance bill, which actually tells us where is this money that we are required in the budget, where is it going to come from? We did that in 2023. And when we did that in 2023, the budget then in 2023 was 3.8 trillion. After that budget was read and the finance bill approved, there has been a few supplementary budgets because the money was not enough. What was supposed to happen right now? It had added only 300 billion into the budget that was there in 2023. Therefore, the country knew that out of 3.8 trillion that we had used last year, because of inflation, because of development so and so that we are going to add, because we have JSS teachers, because we have doctors that we added salary, we are going to be required to add into that budget 300 shillings. And therefore, this 300 billion. And therefore, this 300 billion, where is it going to come from? That is why they went for new taxation. They went and taxed bread. They wanted to tax motor vehicles, but it is proper to tell Kenyans that there will be no crisis. The Finance Act 2023 is still in force until it is repealed by the Finance Act 2024, and therefore there is no cause of alarm. The only cause of alarm is that the government might not want to do the new things that they would have wanted to do 2024 going to 2025.
Yeah. Now, let's talk about the LSK obtaining orders barring security agencies, including the police and intelligence officials, their agents or employees, from arresting and holding peaceful protesters. A lot of arrests, as we're seeing. Some, you'll have to give it to the security officials, are of persons that perhaps have been seen to be engaging in destruction of property. But some arrests also have been made of peaceful protesters. In terms of the arrests of such persons and those that are still in custody, what is their fate as we speak? How long are they supposed to be held for? Do they have to go through a court process to be released? Is it a bailable offense? Let's talk about those that are actually in custody but did not engage in any violence, were actually just peacefully picketing.
Yes. Yesterday, actually, you have to give it up to LSK, who have been very busy. Yesterday, LSK obtained orders from court to release 53 persons who are arrested with no justified cause. And out of the 53, only 6 were arraigned in court. And those ones were arraigned for reasons of arson, and therefore those ones were processed and they were issued with cash bail. Several others were later arraigned yesterday afternoon. But just to bring you and the nation to speed, when you are actually protesting out there and demonstrating and exercising your rights under Article 37, it is good that you do it within the confines of the law. And it is also equally important that they don't infringe on the rights of protesters who are peaceful and unarmed. Reason, over the past few days when the protests have been rife, we have seen several people who have been arrested and abducted. And that is against the law, because what the law says in Article 49, when you are arrested, Lillian, you have 24 hours. The police have 24 hours to arraign you in court and to process you with a plea so that your charges are read, and then you either plead guilty or not guilty. And then what Kenyans should also know, especially those protesting, is that once you are arrested, you also have a right to remain silent, you also have a right to bail, and you also have a right to representation. You can ask that you may be granted the permission to call a council of your own liking, or you can call the LSK toll-free number. But what the protesters and the police should know, that each of them have rights. And therefore, where the rights of peaceful Kenyans end, that's where the rights of the police officer to take responsibility and to maintain law and order starts.
Yeah, and there's also a concern of where cybercrime, I mean, there's the line, where do we draw the line as regards what is cybercrime and what is not, and what is, perhaps, the concern around persons that are supporting the protests on their social media now being told to be, aggressors or to be, in support of the destruction of property, in support of treason, persons that were actually not physically present at the protests, but because of using their social media accounts have also been arrested. Some actually still missing. In terms of what the law says about that, how you can use your social media account even when not physically present at these protests, and how and what where to draw the line as regards what could actually lead into a potential arrest.
Yes. One, in Kenya, we are regulated by first the Constitution. That is where we draw the right to privacy and all these other rights. But then specifically, as you have rightfully said, those cyber crimes or alleged cyber crimes by the police, it is good that the police also rely on the Cyber Crimes Act and also the Data Protection Act. Lillian, in this nation, we are normally not short of laws, because we have so many of them, but we don't maybe mostly execute them. But those who have been arrested for maybe things that they have posted on social media, what they may be looking at and what maybe the security agencies may be looking at is either they violated the privacy of some people. Maybe you remember a while ago people attempted to share contacts of senior people or leaders, the MPs and people in government. And some of the security apparatus interpreted that as an infringement of the right to privacy. Equally, the right to, or Cyber Crimes Act also enumerates a lot of rights, and also how you can be able to use your social media without infringing on the rights of other people. But may I say at this point, the government or the security apparatus, I think, they are using old ways to deal with very new or emerging issues or trends, because the trend that is actually on Twitter, X rather, you can actually see people posting and airing their opinions. You join a Twitter space and you find people are airing their opinions in whatever language they put. But how are the police or the government dealing with that? Because these are not usual protesters that you will find in the streets with stones, but they are actually making their voice heard just with a phone. Maybe someone is in their bed sitter, maybe someone is seated at home or in their workplace, but they are actually demonstrating more and making their voices heard more than the people on the street. So the government also needs to know these are new trends, and therefore we need to come up with new ways and methods of handling these things.
And you know, Wakili, there's this common, and you've talked into that, you've spoken into the fact that they are leaderless, they are tribeless. However, when you look at social media, there is also a trend of fake news there, where you see circulars that are being circulated from high offices that are in fact fake, where you see resignations of persons in key positions being circulated that are in fact fake. So as we speak about protesters that are leaderless, that are tribeless, that are speaking as one voice, as the Gen Zs, and now this has become protest for all. It's for the Gen X, for the Gen Zs, for the millennials. It has actually morphed into something else. So as we look into social media and the dangers that lie therein with the circulation of fake circulars, you know, fake intelligence reports and the dangers that lie therein, concerns over that in itself, you know, brewing a lot of uncontrolled chaos, which is now beyond the control of the police and even the military that is now, you know, almost seemingly being deployed to control the chaos. Let's speak into social media and the circulation of the fake news.
Yes, and that is actually a problem, because as I've actually just said a while ago, the government needs to come up with new ways of dealing with new trends of crimes or new trends that citizens have manufactured or have started using. First, the Cyber Crimes Act makes it an offense to publish fake news or to publish false information. Therefore, it is the right, or it is within the purview of the state agencies, especially the National Police Service, to be able to come and arrest or make inquiries into the fake news that have been published by person X. But in terms of consuming this information, public consuming this information because it is fake, and that is why maybe the can you be able to verify, or how can I myself be able to verify some information I've just read on X, or something that has been published that person so and so has resigned?
I'll have you hold your thoughts, Wakili. Let's listen into what is happening there. We're seeing tear gas canisters being lobbed there. That is the Central Business District. Let's listen in. CBD there, where we're seeing heavy police presence, several arrests being made and tear gas canisters being lobbed there. The CBD had little activity going on. We've seen a few commuters milling in and about the CBD. We've seen scenes from City Hall, the Nairobi County Green Army members running up and about, removing debris which had been littered on the road from the anti-finance protests. We're seeing major roads within Nairobi city barricaded by police, even as we see public service vehicles going in and out. However, very little traffic presence being seen in those areas. In downtown areas, earlier we saw pictures from Moi Avenue, Tomboya, Ronald Ngala, Mfangano streets. The areas were almost empty. Most businesses closed there, and very few people milling about, probably leaving the city center. On my way here to work as well, outside our offices here and towards State House, heavy police presence there. And these are roads that are normally full of traffic around this time. Police presence there, police in uniform spotted in various parts of the city, as well as Mombasa, Kisumu, Nyeri, and of course, all roads leading to Parliament sealed off with heavy police presence around the buildings. Police are blocking vehicles and pedestrians seeking to gain access through any of the sealed off roads, including Parliament Road, a section of Harambee Avenue, as well as Cardinal Otunga. At the same time, police have mounted security checks on all roads leading to State House, Nairobi. And this, of course, following demonstrations by the Gen Z, which have now invited millennials, Gen X, and everybody else who chooses to participate in the anti-finance bill protests. And this, of course, coming despite President William Ruto's decision to send the contentious finance bill back to Parliament. And this is what we're seeing as of now. We have seen several arrests that have been made. We've seen anti-riot police turning away motorists, border riders, as well as pedestrians. And the roads affected around, the city here in Nairobi include Processional Way, Valley Road, Jakaya Kikwete Road, Dennis Pritt Road, State House Avenue, and adjacent feeder roads. Earlier today, we saw Kenya Defence Forces on standby at Nyayo Stadium, Nairobi. This, of course, ahead of any planned protests in the capital. And as of now, we were waiting for word from the High Court regarding a ruling on whether or not the deployment of the Kenya Defence Forces is legal, or whether that would in fact take place following a Gazette notice by Aden Duale, Defence CS. And, today's mood rather relatively calm following Tuesday's occurrences where we saw destruction of property, including Parliament buildings, including the Supreme Court. Part of City Hall was on fire as well. And so today, a relatively calmer day, although we have seen police engage protesters in running battles. Arrests have been made. We have seen lobbing of tear gas as well. And as of now, what we are awaiting is word from the High Court as to whether or not the KDF will be deployed. The LSK moved to court to contest this, saying that this was in fact illegal and that there was no state of emergency warranting the need of the deployment of the KDF, as what was actually happening are peaceful protests, and that Kenyans do in fact have a right to protest peacefully. We are going to be waiting to hear whether the High Court will give a way forward regarding that. But as of now, protests are underway in different parts of the country, even as KDF officers remain on standby, patrolling different parts of Nairobi where we have seen them, and police continue to cordon off roads leading to State House, Nairobi. People continue, of course, to express their sentiments around the contentious finance bill on sections of social media, on X. And even as that continues, we will wait to see whether or not the LSK will have its day in asking that the KDF are held off, as no such occurrence, according to the LSK, has happened since the 1982 coup. President William Ruto yesterday spoke in a televised address to the nation, where he said that he had had the voice of the people and had in fact declined to sign the Finance Bill 2024. He proposed of course, a raft of amendments to the bill. But what we do know of now is that Parliament is, in fact, in recess. The President, in his televised address yesterday, proposed that within the next 14 days, a multi-sectoral, multi-stakeholder engagement be held with a view to chart the way forward on matters relating to the content of this bill. At the same time, President Ruto has directed that further austerity measures be taken to reduce expenditure, starting with the Executive Office of the President and extending to the entire executive. He directed that operational expenditure in the presidency be reduced to remove allocations for the travel budget, hospitality and buying of vehicles, renovations and other expenditure. He also directed that Parliament, the judiciary and county governments work with the National Treasury and undertake budget cuts to ensure that the government achieves what, he said he has always advocated for, which is living within our means. And he also said that as this important conversation continues, he intends to continue with the foundational principles upon which this nation is founded, which is constitutionalism. But still, the protesters continue undeterred to protest against harsh economic times, saying that the measures that have been effected so far have not yielded results, and that the heartbeat of the nation still remains a very pained nation, talking about high cost of living and talking about the Kenyan really feeling the burden of some of these decisions. And therefore, we are looking at several parts of the city here in Nairobi where a handful of protesters are milling about. But of course, the police keeping a very keen eye on ensuring that the scenes that were witnessed on Tuesday are not witnessed. We have had the president speak about the destruction of property, public property, amounting to treason, and therefore very heavy police presence, the police sealing off major roads and ensuring that no destruction of property will happen today. We are awaiting for word from the High Court, where the LSK has moved after Defense CS Aidan Duale announced the deployment of the military to help in controlling the security situation following the violent protests that have been experienced in parts of the country in protesting of the finance bill. The LSK in its court papers arguing that no emergency, unrest or instability has been officially declared to warrant the deployment of the KDF. And therefore, in their court papers, the LSK did move to fault the state for failing to demonstrate that the national police had in fact been overwhelmed. Irrespective of that, we have seen pockets of the military doing their rounds as we await the High Court's ruling on this matter. Wakili, it is an hour and a half later, still no word from
yes,
the High Court as regards, the issue to do with the KDF, and it is slowly turning into nightfall.
Yes.
Still, this hangs at bay. We do not know what to expect as of now.
Yes, that is Justice Mugambi, but sometimes you understand the pressure that our judicial officers sometimes find themselves in. But of course, we have faith in the judiciary and the officers, and particularly at this point, faith in the Honorable Justice Mugambi, who had all the parties who were before him this morning, and the oral hearings went up until early afternoon.
Yeah, and over 1,000, I'm seeing actually over 1,000 people have joined the virtual proceedings for the case of the LSK versus CS Duale.
Yes. And maybe that is also one of the reasons, because normally we are not used to be over 200 in court, in one particular court link. And maybe those are some of the technical issues he's facing. We don't want to speculate, but definitely he has to give some direction. He will give directions whether the ruling is ready, whether it is not ready, and when he will deliver it. But definitely before the end of the day, whether it is midnight or whatever time, before he leaves office, I am sure he will have given directions on that.
And talking about, as we wait for this ruling, the government through the Attorney General, Justin Muturi, defended the deployment of the KDF on grounds that the law was followed in the publication of the Gazette notice, but the LSK disagrees.
Yes, we disagree, and the reason why there is that disagreement is that the Gazette notice was there for everyone to see it on the night of Tuesday night. And it was also there for everybody to see that it had not been approved. Parliament had not discussed that prior to the issuance of that Gazette notice, and Parliament actually sat after the fact, and they sat and passed it retrospectively, which cannot work, because the law of or the principle of how laws are formulated is that you cannot begin with the fact and then you promulgate a law that will now govern what you already did. No. That is not how it works. You have to follow the procedure, and if you don't follow the procedure that is set, you are about to fail. And those were the arguments before the court this morning. And the defense, that is the Attorney General and the CS, through their representatives, they tried to defend the same, but I don't want to preempt what Justice Mugabe is going to say in his ruling, but in my own opinion, that was a very wrong move. You cannot execute or you cannot pass a law and then, or rather a gazette notice, and then you follow approving on the following day. That is not just right, and those are the reasons why actually Kenyans are actually maybe on the streets, and they're saying we don't have faith, or we don't actually trust the authorities, because you tell us one thing today, the following day you will do exactly the opposite. Therefore, those are the reasons, because you cannot tell us that a whole cabinet secretary can gazette deployment of police officers at night, and then the following day the parliament can come and try to, for lack of a better word, sanitize that process. It cannot be, unless we have just slided maybe of law. We have to follow procedure.
Yeah, let's talk about the fact that the National Assembly also approved, now moving away from the Attorney General, the National Assembly also approved the deployment of the Kenya Defence Forces to support the police, and this is where your bone of contention lies, in when the National Assembly was actually brought in as regards this Gazette notice and their approving of the deployment of the Kenya Defence Forces to support police amid ongoing anti-finance bill protests. The National Assembly, are the representatives of the people, and therefore by them approving the deployment of the Kenya Defence Forces, what then does this message send? These are the very same people who have since gone on recess.
Yes, and this is the thing with this country, and you do know that the legislature is independent, or rather it is supposed to be independent. As to whether the current legislature is independent is debatable.
And actually there was an MP who criticized this decision on his X account, saying this was done without the media, without most members, without proper debate. In a record 30 minutes, the National Assembly had actually approved for the deployment of the KDF, or the deployment of the KDF without indicating where, why, or for what period.
Yes, and that those are some of the reasons that we actually, that also LSK actually presented before. the KDF is not a small issue. It is actually a very serious issue. That is the last resort of defense as a country. And therefore, if we are unleashing it, we have to be very sure of what we want to do. We have to be very sure that the situation warrants their deployment. And we are saying that according to where we sit, we don't see as if this circumstance warrants their deployment. Because first, the circumstances as they are, you cannot have protesters protest on, I think, 2 days last week and 1 week on this week, 1 day this week, and then you unleash on them Kenya Defence Forces.
Hold that thought, Wakili. Let's listen in. We are in Nairobi. Let's listen in to what is happening there. And in news just in, we're getting reports that the High Court ruling as regards whether or not the KDF will be deployed has been pushed to 5:20 p.m. That is, of course, following the Law Society of Kenya moving to court protesting the government's decision to deploy KDF officers in the wake of anti-finance bill protests. The ruling by Judge Lawrence Mugambi has been moved to 5:20 p.m. We are awaiting that. High Court Judge Lawrence Mugambi will this evening at 5:20 p.m. deliver a ruling on whether he will suspend government decision to deploy KDF officers or not. The judge will give out directions after hearing parties in the case. LSK, through its president Faith Odhiambo, insisted that the deployment of officers is unconstitutional and is meant to scare and intimidate Kenyans not to exercise their constitutional rights. However, the Attorney General and the Ministry of Defense lawyers submitted that there is need to have the KDF officers, adding that there is, in fact, a state of emergency in the country. And according to the respondents, deployment of KDF officers has been done before, and this is not the first case. They argued that there are no irregularities in the Gazette notice issued by Defense CS Aidan Duale. We are waiting that ruling by the High Court at exactly 5:20 p.m. this evening. The ruling was supposed to be made at 3 p.m., but there has been a delay in that, and we are just about under an hour away to hear what the court rules on this matter. Wakili,
yes,
we have up to 5:20 to hear what the High Court even as we wait for that, we're seeing, you know, pictures coming showing that, you know, there is no end in sight as regards to whether people will be leaving the CBD or not. We're still seeing the police trying to contain people there, and therefore this ruling will make a difference as regards what is going to be happening within the city centre, and even the presence of pockets of the military that we've seen. Once the ruling is out, if it does rule in favour of the LSK, do we then expect not to see these people milling about anymore?
Yes, first, I think the magnitude of protests and demonstrations today have scaled down. You cannot compare them with Tuesday's or last week's demonstrations. Therefore, even as we wait for the ruling by the Honorable Justice Mugambi, it is also good to marry that with the circumstances of the ground, that to deploy such forces or Kenya Defence Forces to the streets or within the confines of our republic. However, in the wisdom of the National Security Council and the CS for Defense, they thought it twice to have this deployment. And the question, the real question, or the elephant in the room is why? Because the magnitude of the protests have actually gone down. There is no circumstance that ushered or showed instability or unruliness or how lawlessness had maybe declined in a way that required deployment of the Kenya Defence Forces. So the questions that really begs is, why is the government hell-bent on deploying the defence forces on its citizens? And that is why I'm asking, is there something that we don't know, or is there something that they are not telling us? Because if you look at the situation and the circumstances that we have been seeing the entire of today and those of Tuesday, I don't think there has been anything as to show or as to necessitate deployment of KDF. Maybe, just maybe, the infiltration or the occupation of State House by civilians and the touching of a part of City Hall and the Supreme Court building or outside Supreme Court. Maybe that is what necessitated. But really, is that how fast we can be able to deploy the defense forces? I don't think so.
And speaking of the Kenya Defence Forces, they were seen patrolling city streets on Thursday, that is today, as before the High Court delivered its ruling, and therefore they are, or rather have still been seen patrolling, city streets before this ruling is made by the High Court on whether to suspend their deployment, or rather to suspend the deployment of the military as part of reinforcement plans to neutralize chaotic scenes during the anti-finance bill demonstrations. And what we saw earlier was the KDF personnel snaking through protesters, but they did stay short of engaging them. And the deployment of the military to quell protests has been deemed unconditional by a section of leaders and Kenyans. However, police, on the other hand, continue to lob tear gas canisters as pockets of protesters continue